It's an important session. Of course, the session starts with understanding this whole concept of VAR. Who is this? Portfolio manager. Let's say portfolio manager has a all equity portfolio of 100,000 right now. Now, who is this? Sorry? No. It's his risk manager. So they're having a conversation. Risk manager is recently hired. Portfolio manager has asked him, look at my portfolio and tell me what is the risk. So what risk manager does is, first thing he does is he calculates sigma of the portfolio. So portfolio manager goes back and says, fine, this does tell me about risk. If I think that volatility is a risk, but I want something more concrete. So just by looking at sigma, it's not giving me enough information. So then he goes ahead and he calculates beta. Then the fund manager says that sigma and beta are anyway telling me the same thing. Sigma is telling me variance by itself. Beta is telling me variance vis-a-vis market. Give me something more concrete. So then risk manager opens up his FRM books, reads up this chapter, and he sees that there is a number written there as VAR. So he says, fine, let me go and try and calculate this value at risk number. So how does he calculate that? He would go and ask the fund manager that on an average, what have been the returns on your portfolio, let's say on a monthly basis. What have been the returns on your portfolio on a monthly basis? Let's say the fund manager says the returns on the portfolio on a monthly basis are 2%. Then he's already calculated sigma. So he will go and look up what is the sigma on a monthly basis. So sigma on a monthly basis, I'm making up a random number, let's say that's 4%. So that seems like a reasonably high sigma. Then he will go to the fund manager and he will say, fine, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to assume that returns on the portfolio, assumption, returns on your portfolio, they are following a normal distribution. And if they are following a normal distribution, that means the mean of the distribution should be 2%. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to leave out, so if this is my mean on the left, we are moving in direction of losses. I mean lower profits or losses. In fact, I should write it, lower profits, lower than 2%. Lower profits or losses. And the right hand side, we are looking at higher profits. Of course, we are working in the risk management world. So we are focused on the losses, not on the profits. So he would look at the left hand side. He would say, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to leave out about 5% here in the tail. So about 5% here inside the tail and 95% here. And then I'm going to go and find out what is the point that corresponds to that 5% probability in this distribution. So then he goes and opens up a normal distribution or a standard normal distribution table, and he realizes that the Z value for mean is 0. And if you want a Z value for 5% probability on the left tail, the Z value is going to be minus 1.65. So now we know the Z values. So we need to find out the corresponding value in the normal distribution. So he uses this formula. He will say 2% is the mean. This time minus. Generally in quant, when we would be building confidence interval, we do plus or minus because we are trying to get into both the tails. Now we are worried about only the left tail. So 2% minus. Minus what? 1.5 sigmas. 1 sigma being 4%. Are you following this? So do this and tell me how much do we get. Minus 4.6, that's it. So 4.6 percentage negative is the number that's coming out. That's the corresponding number here, negative 4.6 percentage. Okay, now listen to this carefully. So again, the fund manager and the risk manager, now they're having conversation. Risk manager starts making a variety of comments. First, he goes to the fund manager. He says that our portfolios monthly 5% VAR is 4.6 percentage. We are not saying minus 4.6 percentage. We are saying 4.6 percentage. Why? Because it is value at risk. That means it's a loss. That means it is assumed that it is going to be a negative number. So we don't have to write it negative again. Correct? It's a default assumption. So our 5% monthly VAR, I should have plotted 5% here. 5% monthly VAR is 4.6 percentage. The fund manager doesn't understand. He says, please simplify. So he says, okay, our 5% monthly VAR is 100,000 into 4.6 percentage is equal to $4,600. So he says that our 5% monthly VAR is $4,600. Fund manager again does not understand. He says, please simplify. He says, okay. Now he says, this month you can expect to have minimum amount of loss of $4,600 with 5% probability. And the moment he does that, fund manager now starts getting it. He says, okay, now I understand what you mean. Then he processes this, and the moment he processes this, he gets scared. Scared because of which word? Minimum. So risk manager says minimum, but at 5% probability. The lowest loss that you would have this month is 4,600. Now, why is he saying that? Because if you look at from a distribution perspective, this purple point that you see here, that is the loss of 4,600. 5% region starts from there up to the left, which means there's a 5% probability you will get inside the tail. This is referred to as the tail of the distribution. So 5% chance you would get inside the tail. And if you're inside the tail, the lowest loss you can have is 4,600. Are you following the intuition? Which means we can write it this way, that VAR is in a way a best case scenario inside the tail. Which means in that 5% probability region, VAR is apparently the best case scenario. Because if you get inside the tail, you can have losses which are much more worse than that. But VAR is the lowest possible loss out of that entire spectrum. Have you understood the intuition? So write down this, then you ask me questions. But finish writing first. Now, couple of important pointers here. I'm going to draw this normal distribution again. So again, let's draw a bell-shaped distribution. That 5% range was here. This corresponding point was $4,600. So the most common interpretation of a VAR is 5% probability of having minimum loss of $4,600. Or there's also an alternate interpretation, but this one is a little tricky. 95% probability of having a maximum loss of $4,600. Correct? Because if you're looking at things from a 95% perspective, is the worst leftist most point. Correct? Or having a profit. So what happens is, if you leave this sentence incomplete, then that actually becomes a wrong sentence, and in multiple choice questions they actually test you on this. So that 95% sentence does indicate that maximum loss you'll have is 4,600, but you may also have profits, because see, look at this area. This entire area, some part of this area is losses, maybe somewhere here we have losses, and this area is profit. So this area has includes profit and losses both, but this area is only going to be losses. So 5% probability of minimum loss of 4,600, 95% probability of maximum loss of 4,600, or having profits. This is profits. The right tail of the distribution, profits. Yes. He asked, since we are not calling it minus 4.6, the var value is going to be positive. Yes. If you observed, I did not write minus 4,600. Why? Because I am using the word loss. So it is implied. So even if that word is not used, if someone says 5% monthly var is, let's say $100, you assume that it's a loss. Okay? That's the whole idea. We are into risk management. So when you're calculating var, you're looking at losses. Yeah, come on, you can ask me questions now. Sorry? What if the actual value is positive? Then ignore it. Then calculate a 1% var. And even after that it's positive, you don't need a risk manager. These are returns. So in theory, it's impossible to say that I will not have losses, even if you have government bonds. Correct? Because even government bond value fluctuates. The market value fluctuates. But if you have some sort of a structure where you have assured returns locked in, then you don't need a risk manager. Right? The whole purpose is defeated. Then why do you need to calculate a var? Yes, anything else you want to ask? Okay. Now the whole thing is nice and pretty. It's easy to calculate. There's just one trick here. Tell me, what is the trick? There's something that we assumed is normal distribution. And we know that normal distribution has certain properties. And the thing is that not necessary that what you assumed, what kind of distribution returns will follow versus how they will actually follow. Which means it is not necessary that this is a reality, right? This you are calculating based on what numbers you have calculated in the past or what you forecasted. But does it actually mean it is going to work that way? No, not necessary. For example, so if I do this calculation, and let us say I take 100 days of data, no, 100 months of data, because we are dealing with monthly var. So I take 100 months of data. Okay. You can also do it on historical data. Either ways. You take 100 months of data and then you arrange their returns from lowest to highest. So you arrange them in an order. You start with the lowest one and slowly you come to highest. So let me put that here. There was a month when we had 10,700. Then in 1 month we had 9,000. In 1 month we had 6,000. We had 4,900. We had 4,800. We had 4,650. Then one more month we had 4650. Then we had 4200, 3900, 2000. And in this fashion we have losses. Based on this, you can backtest that whether the VAR that you've calculated is really a good number or something is wrong. So how will you calculate? If you have 100 months and if you're dealing with a 5% VAR, 5% VAR was how much? 4600. Then out of 100 months, we should have not more than 5 months with losses of more than 4600. Are you following this? Let's calculate. We have 100 months here. Okay, so we are back testing and checking whether our calculated VAR is a logical number. So every time your loss is more than 4600, we call that as an exception. So we're going to calculate the number of exceptions we have here. So is first one an exception? Second one? Third one? Fourth one? Fifth one? Sixth one? Seventh one? Eighth one? No. So how many exceptions do you have here? 7. But how many were tolerable? 5. It seems like number of exceptions are more than what we wanted. It seems we have underestimated the VAR. We have underestimated VAR. This is what we are going to conclude from there. And another important conclusion we are going to have is, it seems actual returns distribution have fatter tails. Actual return distribution have fatter tails compared to normal distribution. What do you mean by fatter tails? Fatter tails means higher probability in the tail of the distribution. Is it making sense? So you calculate the number of exceptions. They should have been 5. It came out to be 7. That means there is more frequency in the tail, and more frequency means a fatter tail here. So this is how we typically backtest the VAR. Yes, I'll give it a nice sweet heading of backtesting. Do you want me to explain this again? See, it simply means that what is the probability that my loss will exceed $4,600 in a month? Exceed 4,600, because 4,600 was the minimum loss. So what is the probability my loss will exceed? 5%. So if I have 100 months, how many months I am expecting that my loss will exceed? Ashwini, do it on your calculator. 100 into 5%. How much? 5% equal to 50. No, it's not 5. What are you doing? Think again. छोड़ो, अब तकलीफ मतलब ज़्यादा. So, if there's a 5% probability, in 100 months, we should not have more than 5 months where losses are exceeding 4,600. But how many months did we have where losses exceeded that amount? We had 7 months, which means we have underestimated the amount of VAR, which means the actual return distributions have fatter tails compared to the normal distributions. Fatter tails simply means larger frequency. Okay, should we go ahead now? All right. Now what happens is, remember these 3 numbers. We'll also map them from your, write down these 3 numbers somewhere. 1.28, 1.65 and 2.33. I'll show you how they come. Let's do a nice example here. Let us say we have a portfolio value of $100,000. Let us say monthly returns which are expected are 3%, and monthly sigma is 5%. We are going to assume that the data set follows a normal distribution. Of course, it's an assumption which can always go wrong. Now, based on this information, you want to calculate a 10% monthly VAR, 5% monthly VAR, and 1% monthly VAR. Alright, I'm going to solve now. So, we'll draw our three distributions. Just assume it's normal. Second one, third one. Now, mean of our distribution is 3%. Ashwini, look at this carefully. We want to get into the tails. In the first instance, we are leaving out 10%. Second instance, we are leaving out 5% in the tail. And in the last one, we are leaving out 1%. Now, by the way, if I have to use the term deeper in the tail, am I referring to 10% VAR or 1% VAR? 1%. So typically, this is referred to as deeper in the tail. And listen to this sentence carefully. When we go deeper into the tail, the value of losses will start increasing non-linearly. Right? The amount of VAR would be substantially higher compared to when you are slightly outside the tail. So what we need to do is we need to go and find out probabilities corresponding these numbers. So for this one, I'm going to make use of the Z table just so that we understand from where these values have come. So let's pop up the tables. We will need a standard normal distribution table. In the first case, we want to leave out 10% probability. So I will make use of the negative values. I have to search for minus 0.9. I have to search for, sorry, did I say minus? No, I have to search for 0.10, right? Because we are starting with the left hand side. So I'm going to search for 0.10 probability here. Where is 0.10 coming? Somewhere here. Is that number visible to you? Because after this we move to 9.85%. And what is the corresponding value? This is minus 1.28, and this is minus 1.2, and this is the second decimal. So we have minus 1.28 that comes in here. The corresponding Z number is 1.28. It's actually minus, but we just write as 1.28. If I need 5%, so let's look at 5%. For 5% in the tail, I'm leaving out 0.05. So when I search for 0.05, I'm getting that number somewhere here. Visible? Because after this we have 4.95. And what is this number? This is minus 1.6 and this is 4. But we generally take an average of these two, so that becomes minus 1.645, and that's how we use minus 1.65. So I'm going to use 1.65 here. And when I need 1% VAR, the probability I will have to search for is 0.01. That is 1%. So 0.01 is coming out somewhere here. This is minus 2.3, 2.30, 2.31, 32, 33. So we use 2.32 or 33. What is the number we've written? 33 or 2? 32, 33. So I'm going to write 2.33 here. Is that okay? So the job at hand is to find out these corresponding numbers here. the number in normal distribution here. So we'll calculate the distance in sigmas, which is going to work this way. 3% minus, did you understand, Ashwini? 5% into 1.28, 3% minus 5% into 1.65, 3% minus 5% into 2.33. So how much is this number? Sorry? 3.41, just 4. So 3.4 negative, 5.25 negative, 8.65 negative. So we'll convert each of these amounts to dollar amount. So here this loss is 3,400. This loss is 5250, and this loss is 8650. And look at how exponentially your loss is increasing when you start getting into deeper inside the tail. Correct? From 3,400 we jump to 8650. So Basel II used to make use of this VAR. Now most of the Basel has moved to different concept. So we'll learn that in FRM part 2. You wanted to ask something? Is there a logic why standard deviation is higher more than the returns? No, it is not necessary. In this instance, as long as your standard deviation is more than 1.5, you will still have negative answers, even at 10%. So there is no condition that your standard deviation should always be higher. But if your standard deviation is too low, you probably don't need a risk manager. Should we go ahead now? Easy? Alright, now let's scale up a little bit. Now what happens is, in a lot of practical applications, we are actually dealing with daily VARs as against monthly VAR. Now the good news is the formula is same. Expected return, that means mean return, minus the critical value from your Z table multiplied with the standard deviation. So typical sign that is being used by the authors in the FRM text is mu for the mean return minus the Z into sigma. Now what they've said is, because the mean return is so small, so this return is generally quite small. And since we are in risk management, we want to be conservative. So they assume this return to be 0. So they simply make an assumption that mean return is 0 itself. And if mean return is 0, what is your formula? 0 minus Z value into sigma. Correct? Now you don't need to write Z value, and you don't have to worry about minus because anyways it's VAR. So going forward, our VAR would simply be calculated, especially when we're dealing with daily VAR, it would simply be calculated as the Z value into sigma, because of the assumption that daily mean returns are 0. And the moment you start doing that, then because that mean value is gone, now it gives you a lot of power to make conversions of multiple VAR. So that's what we'll be learning now. I'll show you how to do it. Write down this quickly. Done? Okay. So let's do an example now. This example I think is testable. Let us say daily sigma is 1.2%. Portfolio value is 100,000. Based on this information, calculate 1% daily VAR, 5% weekly VAR. All right, so here's what we're going to do. So 1% daily VAR is what? So we have to multiply 1.2 percentage multiplied with the multiplied with 1% Z value, which is how much? 2.33. So how much is this coming to? 2.796 percentage. You convert that to amount, so that's $2,796. Now, to calculate weekly VAR, you would need weekly sigma. Correct? How will you get weekly sigma? You will take daily sigma of 1.2 percentage and multiply that with root of 5. How did I get root of 5? Number of working days in a week. So tell me, what is the weekly sigma? 2.68 percentage. And then your calculation is going to be 2.68 percentage multiplied with 1.65. How much is that? 4.427. So that's going to be $4,427. Now the question that I think may show up on your exam is, they will not give you any of this. Nothing. Wait a minute, they'll give you something. They will give you this 1% daily VAR, and then they will ask you to convert that to 5% weekly VAR, which should be very simple. Okay, so here is how you build the thought process on this. So you don't have to memorize the formula if you learn to think through this. So how to think? Step number 1, you start with daily VAR, you want to convert to weekly VAR. So first you do the time period conversion. So you will say 2796, and VAR will not increase linearly with time because of that root T rule. So I will have to multiply this number with under root 5. So by doing that, you have converted 1% daily VAR to 1% weekly VAR. But do we need 1% weekly? We need 5%. So then you think, what was the multiplier for Z value here? 2.33. And what is the multiplier required? 1.65. So what you do is you multiply this with 1.65. But because you've already multiplied by 2.33, divide this with 2.33 and you get a direct conversion value. Let's see if it works. Do this. 2796 multiplied with 5 under root equal to multiplied with 1.65 divided by 2.33 equal to. Getting it? So by using this process, you should be able to convert any VAR into any denomination with any confidence levels. And if you think through it, then you would not be required to memorize the formula. Is it okay? Should we go ahead, or you want to practice on this? Conversion? You can handle conversions? Okay. So I'm going back to my checklist. VAR is done. We've done delta normal, you just don't know that yet. So we'll work. Interpretation we've done. Convergence we've done. Alright, let's start doing some serious business now. So now we will learn linear VARs versus full valuation VAR. I'm going to do one example, which again I think is a FRM part 1 type example. The first one is the linear VAR. Second one is full valuation. face value of a bond is 1000. Coupon rate 10%. Maturity 20 years. YTM 15%. Yield volatility is, I should say, annual, okay, monthly yield volatility. %. Monthly yield volatility 2%. Now, this is a basis point volatility, which simply means YTM might swing by 2%. Which we call this as basis point volatility. So, yield volatility 2%. Calculate 5% monthly VAR here and here. I am not going to calculate this for you, but I'm going to tell you how to calculate. When you're using a linear approach, you're basically assuming that there is some sort of a linear relationship between the two variables. Here, that linear relationship is between the change in the interest rate and change in the bond price. Change in the interest rate and change in the bond price, linear relationship is defined by a beautiful number called modified duration. So, to deal with the VAR on the left hand side, you would first have to calculate modified duration. Then use a little bit of your Banya logic and figure out how you're going to calculate VAR. Whereas on the right hand side, do not use the modified duration, perform a full valuation. Perform a full valuation, which is nothing but simply means use your TVM bro and get the answer. See if you can do it. Start. Do you want me to solve? Let's solve together. Once you solve one, then you're going to find it very simple. Step number 1, we will calculate modified duration. Most of you know how to do it. In case if someone is watching the video and doesn't know how to calculate modified duration, he'll have to refer to Financial Markets and Products videos on bond valuation. The formula we use for modified duration is V minus V plus divided by 2 into V0 into delta Y. We just shock the YTM by 1% on either side and look at the average percentage change in the price. Second clear TVM, do this with me. 1000 future value, 100 payment, 20 N, 15 IY, compute present value. Now, make the number positive. Yeah, compute present value, make it positive, store it in the second memory slot. Then make 14 is IY, compute present value, make it positive, first memory slot. 16 is IY, I'm changing YTM by 1% on either direction. 16 is IY, compute present value, make it positive, third memory slot. Now I'm going to use the formula RCL1 minus RCL3 equal to divided by 2 divided by RCL2 divided by 1% equal to. How much do you have? 6.60. Now most probably this would be given to you in the question. Okay, but in case if it's not given, we know how to deal with this. Now what happens is we start calculating our monthly VAR using the linear approach or the delta normal approach, duration being the delta here. So what we are going to say is, we are going to say that my yield sigma of my yield is 2%. And we are dealing with the 5% VAR. So my Z value would be how much? Z value is 1.65. So my potential change in the yield not expected, but change in the yield is going to be 1.65 into 2%. So the total change in the yield is going to be how much? 3.3%. Now, simple logic is when interest rate, so percentage delta y, when interest rate changes by 1%, percentage delta p is going to be 6.60. That's what duration means. For every 1% change in the bond price, 1% change in the interest rate, bond price will change by how much? 6.60. I am expecting interest rate to change by 3.3. So then bond price will change by how much? Are you following this? So calculate 6.6 into 3.3. 21.78. So I'm expecting bond price to change by 21.78%. Now, what is the current bond price? Press RCL2, that's your current bond price. 687 point. Okay, so 687. This bond price will change by 21.78%. How much is that? 149.6. That's it. That's your answer. This is your 5% monthly VAR using the linear model. Got the logic here? So we can also build a formula, like in your notes they've given a formula for this linear approach, but I don't want you to memorize the formula because formulas might fail. Full price of a bond into modified duration into the Z value into sigma of the yield. If you just multiply all of this together, you get the answer. If you want to check that, see 687 into 6.6 into 1.65 into 2%. That is my yield volatility 2%. Just multiply all the numbers together. See what do you get. You would get the same answer, 149.6. But instead of memorizing this, understand what's the intuition that we are following here. Intuition is, I will expect my interest rate to change by 3.5% based on historical observation of the sigma. And once I know it will change by 3.3%, then I know with duration of 6.6, my bond price will change by 21.78%. And how much is that? That is 149.6. Got it? How to do this one, the one on the right hand side? It's even easier. You follow the same process. So first you will say 1.65 into 2% is equal to 3.3%. Now current YTM is 15. Current bond price is 687. Revised YTM will change by 3.3. So revised YTM will become 18.3. So at 18.3, what will be my bond price? Correct? You move YTM in the direction which is unfavorable to you because we're dealing with losses. It's a value at risk. So in your TVM row, just say IY as 18.3. Everything else is anyways there. Make your IY as 18.3. Compute present value. How much? 562.18. And now you take the difference of these two. By how much your bond price has fallen. 4 point. Okay. Approximately 124. That's your VAR using this approach. This is your full valuation approach. Okay. Question he asked, this is monthly VAR, but are we still considering mean as 0? Here, mean doesn't matter because it's not the sigma of the returns. Now we have sigma of the volatility. And this was a basis point volatility, which means I did not take 15% into 2%. I just assume 2% is the movement in the interest rate. Correct? So mean here doesn't matter in this instance. Yes, we have different results. Full valuation is lower because of the benefits of convexity. Correct? If you're just using duration, it's going to show higher losses. But when you use your TVM row, it considered convexity. Therefore, it is showing lower losses. Now, this is a highly simplified version. Imagine if you have a portfolio made of 30 different assets and few options. Right? What you'll have to do is you'll have to change the parameters, insert them into your valuation model, and then your model will calculate the revised portfolio price. And the difference between the previous portfolio price and the revised portfolio price, that difference is going to be your VAR number. Is this making sense? Do you want to practice? Should I go ahead? Okay, so Ashwin is asked, both of these are given different VAR, which one we should consider? In practice, you consider this. If you have a model built for it, which most of the large investment banks will have. If you want a quick back of the envelope calculation, then you use the one on the left, which is fairly simple. So linear approach. So this is also called the delta normal approach. There's also a third one called the delta gamma approach. Okay, which when you use, so delta gamma approach is essentially making use of the second derivative, using the same Taylor series expansion, like the convexity formula. So if you use the first derivative and second derivative, your answers will get even more precise. But this is the highest level of precision because you're running the entire valuation model again and getting the answer, full valuation. This is just a bond. Options are not linear, neither are bonds. Right? But what we're doing is we calculated a local delta. The relationship is curve. You take the current point, you draw a line which is tangent on the curve, then you calculate the slope of that line. We call that as local delta. So in both, even if it was an option, we could do it the same way.